Ink feels ordinary today. It comes in cartridges, bottles, and pens, ready to use instantly. But for much of human history, ink was anything but simple. In many ancient cultures, making ink was a slow, deliberate process, one that could take months and in some cases, years. This wasn't inefficiency. It was precision, patience, and early material science. The history of ink is closely tied to the history of writing itself. As early as around 2500 BCE, civilizations such as ancient Egypt and China were already producing black writing inks. These early inks were not dyes in the modern sense. Instead, they were pigment-based, relying on carbon, the same element that gives charcoal and soot their deep black color. In East Asia, ink making became especially refined. By the time of the Qin and Han dynasties in China, solid ink, known today as ink sticks, was already in use. These ink sticks could be stored for long periods and ground with water when needed, making them practical as well as durable. Archaeological finds show that sophisticated ink production existed more than 2,000 years ago, long before modern chemistry. At the heart of ancient black ink was soot, often called carbon black or lampblack. This soot was produced by burning organic materials such as pine wood, vegetable oils, or animal fats under controlled conditions. The goal was not complete combustion, but incomplete burning, which produced extremely fine carbon particles suspended in smoke. These particles were carefully collected, sometimes over weeks, because only the finest soot produced smooth, stable ink. Not all soot was equal. Heavy particles and impurities could ruin the ink's consistency and cause uneven writing or fading. To solve this, ink makers washed the soot in water. Lighter, purer carbon particles remained suspended, while heavier impurities sank to the bottom and were removed. This step alone shows how much empirical knowledge these craftsmen had, long before microscopes or modern laboratories. Once purified, the soot was mixed with a binder. Most commonly, this binder was animal glue, made by boiling animal hides, bones, or connective tissue to extract collagen. When cooled, this glue provided structure, allowing the carbon particles to adhere to paper or silk while remaining suspended in water during use. The balance was delicate. Too much binder made the ink glossy and brittle. Too little caused the ink to bleed or fade. In some traditions, additional ingredients were added in very small quantities. Natural fragrances were sometimes included to counter the smell of animal glue. In certain high-end inks, minerals such as cinnabar or metallic powders were added for subtle tonal variation or symbolic significance. These additions were not random. They were the result of generations of experimentation and refinement. After mixing, the ink paste was pressed into molds to form ink sticks. These molds were often carved with decorative patterns, inscriptions, or maker's marks. But shaping the ink was only the beginning. The drying and aging process that followed was crucial. Ink sticks were dried slowly, under controlled conditions, to prevent cracking or uneven hardening. Rushed drying could ruin an entire batch. High-quality ink sticks were often aged for extended periods. Aging allowed moisture to escape evenly and allowed the binder and carbon particles to stabilize together. In some workshops, ink was aged for several years before being sold. The belief, supported by long experience, was that older ink produced smoother strokes, deeper blacks, and more predictable behavior when ground. To use the ink stick was ground against an inkstone with a small amount of water. This process was not mechanical. The speed, pressure, and water ratio were controlled by the user. The result was an ink whose thickness and darkness could be adjusted precisely. For scholars and calligraphers, this grinding process was not merely preparation. It was a contemplative act, a way to slow the mind before writing. Culturally, ink held enormous importance. In China, the ink stick was one of the four treasures of the study, alongside the brush, paper, and inkstone. These were not just tools. They were symbols of learning, discipline, and moral character. The quality of one's ink reflected the seriousness of one's scholarship. Cheap or poorly made ink was associated with carelessness, while refined ink was a mark of respect for the written word. Similar carbon-based inks were used elsewhere, though with regional differences. In India, Black ink was traditionally made from soot collected by burning oils or resins, mixed with plant gums as binders. In Europe, a different tradition emerged. By the medieval period, iron gall ink, made from oak galls and iron salts, became widespread. While effective, iron gall ink often corroded paper over time, a problem carbon-based inks largely avoided. So why did these slow, labor-intensive ink-making processes fade away? The answer lies in industrialization. As printing expanded and literacy increased, societies needed ink that could be produced quickly, cheaply, and in massive quantities. Synthetic dyes, modern pigments, and industrial binders made it possible to manufacture ink on demand, with consistent results and minimal aging. Modern inks are engineered for specific purposes: printing presses, fountain pens, ballpoint pens, or digital printers. Many rely on dyes rather than pigments, allowing for brighter colors and smoother flow at high speeds. However, dyes are generally less stable than carbon pigments and can fade over time when exposed to light. Ancient carbon-based inks, by contrast, are chemically stable. Carbon does not fade in the way organic dyes do. This is why manuscripts written over 1,000 years ago can still appear strikingly black today. The trade-off was time. Ancient ink respected time, while modern ink prioritizes efficiency. Despite industrial dominance, traditional ink making has not completely disappeared. Small workshops still produce ink sticks using historical methods, often following recipes passed down through generations. These inks are valued not only for their performance, but also as cultural artifacts, objects that embody patience, skill, and accumulated knowledge. In a world that moves faster than ever, ancient ink offers a reminder that permanence once mattered more than speed. Every stroke carried the weight of time. Time spent collecting soot, purifying materials, aging ink, and preparing the mind to write. This was not just ink. It was a process shaped by centuries of observation, restraint, and respect for materials. And perhaps that is the most important lesson these ancient processes leave behind. Some things were never meant to be rushed.